Welcome all. Today's going to be a brief overview of our terrestrial storage of biomass update. We're currently in public consultation phase. However, we'd like to take you through the major updates that have been made at this stage. So update and overview. The methodology update is currently under review by multiple stakeholders. So in other words, the draft is currently live. We've done a considerable amount of work on the draft internally. However, at the moment, it's been opened up to key stakeholders for expert review, such that we can take into consideration everybody's thoughts and opinions, so that we're trying to align as best as possible with world-leading science, given some of the obvious difficulties with doing that, given where we're at as an overall or a broad scientific community. To be clear about the public consultation phase, that's going to run from the 1st of June through to the 22nd of June, in advance of an advisory board meeting and approval at the end of this month. So that's to give us enough time to make sure that we've been able to incorporate everybody's feedback. And to be more specific, that's not just stakeholders that are engaged in the review process of the actual document. There's also a broad set of questions that have been distributed to people more generally, that anybody has access to, and I'll show you where that can be accessed from in a moment, and also go through some of those key questions. We welcome feedback from stakeholders. It's a really valuable part of this process. All of our methodologies are considered live documents, and they're constantly works in progress as we all learn and evolve. And I guess a lot of this work is learning by doing and evolving the science with new data as we actually learn from what's happening in the field. We want things to be conservative, informed, and transparent as we go forward. And as I mentioned, you can download the public consultation questionnaire online on our website. There's a link to that as well, and also our email address that you can contact us on. And if you could please use the subject line terrestrial storage feedback, that would be greatly appreciated. Okay, so again, a little bit more of the intention of the update and a little bit of history on what's been done to this point. In March 2022, our advisory board approved a pilot version of this methodology. Back then, I guess more as a legacy naming convention, it was called woody biomass burial. We've now learnt an enormous amount about lignocellulistic biomass, and feel that maybe we should upgrade our language a little bit in line with the scientific community as well. Woody biomass is obviously still something that's incredibly relevant, but I don't know that we need to continue to call the methodology that name. And certainly the term burial hasn't helped with the view of this methodology and its usefulness in carbon sequestration. So we've now renamed the methodology terrestrial storage of biomass. And as I mentioned, covers lignin-containing biomass and the storage of that biomass under such conditions for 100 years. Obviously, that's not super straightforward, and that's why we've had to update this methodology and are seeking consultation and input on the journey. Key points to be raised and aspects of significance or critical significance in this update that we've considered at length. Storage chamber design, briefly there, like most of these points, there's many ways to do this. It's not for us at Puro to tell you exactly how to do it. The point is that the storage chamber design is able to maintain set conditions with controlled parameters for 100 years, so that we have the best chance of no change in that biomass occurring. When change is occurring, we're losing carbon, which means we're moving backwards, even if it's slowly. So storage chamber design is critical. We've gone through that. Again, many ways to do it. Monitoring, verification and reporting, always a big one. I'm not going to extensively go through that now. I'll go through some of the key questions that we've raised around that. But that will be made apparent in the methodology, also when that's shared more broadly. Environmental and social safeguards, also another big one that we've updated. That chapter was quite light to begin with. Now it's been significantly updated and enhanced. Not to make things more difficult for projects, actually to make it more practical, but to also make sure that we've actually considered things that are relevant that may have been given a little bit of a light touch beforehand. I think a lot of what we're trying to do in this industry is making sure that we're doing things safely and not doing more damage. So we've written that in a way that I think enhances that and makes it better for everyone attempting to apply this methodology in the long run. Legal and financial arrangements, also not straightforward. Seemingly straightforward, but we've also had to really consider and look into a lot of aspects there. If something were to happen that was unforeseen, what could actually be done, and how is it, or how are we able to have a property title that's robust for 100+ years. It obviously varies by jurisdiction, region, geography, however you wish to term it. So that's also not super straightforward. So we've done our best to update that. We've also looked at the risk of re-emissions. The key questions that we've gone through in the methodology document, that I guess it helped us enhance the methodology document, and these are also available online. This is a summarized version of these, but you can find this questionnaire online, as I've mentioned. But these really helped us to formulate our understanding of what was done so that we could actually update a protocol document or our methodology document accordingly. So let's just go through them from top to bottom quickly. I don't need to bore everyone with my voice, but I think it's also useful to give a little bit of commentary on some of these things to enhance the understanding and to give a little bit of a face to who we are. The types of biomass should be eligible to be sourced for durable storage. That needs to be considered. In other words, to make it blunt, would we consider biomass that doesn't contain lignin, and why? At this stage, it would seem that lignin-containing biomass would be the only biomass we would consider for this method. But again, we're open to being wrong, but it would seem that that is by far and away the most durable in terms of the scientific evidence. I'll run through most of these relatively quickly. They're fairly straightforward, so they don't need a lot of commentary. How can methane levels be measured and monitored through time? Not super easy to do, given this approach. There are many ways of doing it, but we need to be more specific in terms of how that would be done. A point source of concentrated methane can be measured and monitored with relative simplicity to a stack of biomass that's not really decomposing or doing much. So we need to consider the differences between the two and not prescribe approaches that would act as if we have a point source of methane, which we don't. What's the most reliable way to physically measure biomass decomposition? Again, many ways of doing that. So we're interested in knowing how folks are looking at doing that. And specifically what tests they would do, what samples they would take, how that's going to actually transpire. And really, yeah, getting into the nuts and bolts of that in relation to the methane as well. As I've mentioned, the property title and associated easement different in every jurisdiction. So we're trying to get an honest sense of how that would be done in different geographies. How can a risk of re-emission be practically managed? Again, very easy to say that we can in theory, but how would that actually be done? We're also trying to really get a good sense of that. Should a fund which provides an accountability buffer be expected? for the unexpected re-emissions? If yes, why? If no, why? And should that be limited to projects with large tonnages of biomass that are being buried? Should there be a threshold? These are the sorts of things that we're looking to understand during this month. There's no, I guess to preface this as well, there's no strict answers with these things at this stage. We really need to consider practically what's likely to happen and how would we then practically manage a situation, whether that's an actual event where the storage has been compromised, or whether we're looking at how we would fund something if something's gone wrong. But there's no point prescribing something if it can't be followed through in reality. So that's really, I suppose, the message with each of these questions, not theoretical pontification. Given uncertainties in measurement, and there's many, and the scientific understanding of decay rates, in other words, how biomass decays and behaves in reality, should we require a buffer to account for that uncertainty so that we give buyers and other people the certainty that we've considered that up front? It could be wise, it may not be, depending on your perspective. How would you revise the assessment for environmental impacts for each project? That's more in line with my statement earlier about the fact that we've spent a considerable amount of time considering those in more detail and built that chapter out considerably. So that's really what that's reflecting. So are there anything else? We've looked at a life cycle assessment again and had another think about that and how we actually consider various timeframes with that. And the big question, is there enough new information and understanding or new data, say it however, to remove the pilot phase status of this methodology? So thank you in advance to those of you who are going to provide feedback. We all need to learn together. So thank you for those of you. However critical you are, it can help us enormously on this journey together. So as long as we're aware of what we don't know, I think that's the most important thing, and framing that feedback in a way where we can use that internally and do something with it. I think that's the other thing that's very important. So to make it practical for us so that we can, really do something with it and enhance what we're doing for the benefit of everyone. So we have 3 weeks effectively for that. We have the email there that we can be contacted at, the subject line, and the public questionnaire is made available with our blog online. This will also be embedded in that blog and shared with everybody. So thank you in advance and look forward to getting your feedback.